My fellow Americans. It felt fitting somehow. So, first off, I'm really happy to be here. To be talking at Fronteers. It's awesome. I mean, who here was at the Congress this year? It was great, wasn't it? I was there just minding my own business, enjoying the wonderful vibe, enjoying the great food. And this guy comes up to me. I'm like, oh yeah, it's this Frontiers guy. He's like, you're Joop, right? Like, yeah, I'm Joop. Right, because we see you everywhere, but we don't know who you are. I'm like, oh, well, you know, this and this guy. I think I said, oh, I'm Mallory's husband. That usually works. But he says, oh, we have this thing, and Carl Groves is speaking, and we're looking for another speaker, and we thought maybe you would like to speak. And I said, that's great, because I was already part of the magical mystery accessibility tour with Mr. Groves through Germany, which is still going on, and it's awesome. And Carl's German keeps getting better. So I said, sure, and now here I am, and wow, full house, great, I'm so happy to be here. So I'm going to talk today about tooling and accessibility tooling. So the picture on this slide is a photo of a street automated bricklayer machine. And these things are great because it puts down this whole layer of, fishbone pattern bricks. And it's great because we're lazy and you don't have to ruin your knees now because the machine can do it for you. So, as said, I'm Joop van Achterberg. On Twitter, I'm Dead Tonight. And on 40 meters ham radio, you can CQ, Papa Delta 5, Juliet Oscar Bravo, and I might be on the air. Likely not, but I might be. I'm a freelance software developer. I mostly do accessibility work. And well, tonight I'd like to talk about a subject which, as developers, it's dear to our heart. It's testing. Because, you know, that was wrong. This should have come later. Because you were going to say this, right? So I was going to talk about testing. It's already going wrong. But anyway, on with the show. So testing, because we have automated testing and we unit test. So we make sure that our interfaces of our components are correct. And we have integration tests where we test whether our components actually interact correctly with each other. And then we have the system test where we check our entire system from front to back and see if it operates to spec. So we also have manual testing. Here's a picture of a cat using a mouse, which is kind of weird, I guess. That's an interesting machine. Actually, I have no idea what that is. This ear thing keeps getting loose. Why is that? So, does anyone know what kind of computer this is? I have no idea. It's some weird computer this cat's using, but maybe that's the type of computers cats use. I don't know. So, and accessibility testing can be automated and manual. And the first thing you should probably start with is HTML. And I'm going to be talking about web accessibility. I'm not going to be talking about mobile app accessibility. I'm not going to talk about PDF accessibility. That would be a whole different talk. The focus will be web accessibility. Because as developers, we have a responsibility to make sure that what we build is not only technically correct, but it should be accessible, because, you know, we're the masons, the carpenters, the bricklayers, the architects of the digital era, and whatever we build should be open and available to everybody. So good carpenters, good masons, they all need good tools. So I figured, well, it'd be a good subject to talk about. All right, so which tools do we have available for web accessibility? We have validators. So let's go there. A good validator, which I'm showing now, is a W3 markup validation service. It's really great. There's the DTD validator, basically very strict, doc type, XHTML, HTML4, and there's the newer one, the HTML new validator, which does the more modern HTML5 standard. So I was going to run Fronteers through this. So who thinks it's more than 10 errors? All right. More than 5? 0? All right, well, let's check. Whoop. Please work now, internet. All right. Okay, so this is weird. This is actually green, but the coloring is off. But document checking completed. No errors or warnings to show. Big applause for Fronteers, because they got all their stuff right. But this is like asking the smartest kid in the class to do the problem on the board. It's unfair. Why would I do this to Fronteers? It makes no sense. No, what I stress test these tools with is Lynx cars. Link scars is great. So this is a website that I mean, it's got transparent dogs and cats running around and blinking text and stuff is moving, and there's even an autoplay video that I had to pause, which she will do really bad karaoke. So this is Link, she sells cars, and this type of organized chaos is her brand, and she does really well for herself. So I figured, okay, let's run that through the validator. Another site I used to test, because this is a fairly modern site. Apart from it being kind of weird, it's still, you know, fairly modern. There's an older one, which is Angren.net. Hooray! This is a Norwegian site where you can order electronic parts online. And there's this whole, I don't know, mismatched amount of photos and text and you know, there's actually more. Let me scroll to the right. Hey! So, it should be known that these type of things can kill automated tools. I'm not saying I did that. I'm saying it can done. People who might, you know, break stuff. So, Link scars, again, validator. It says, okay, I found 206 errors, 345 warnings. That's pretty good. XHTML1 strict, so this is the old validator. This one's written in Perl. Yeah, Perl. All right. So what type of errors does it give us? Okay, mainly encoding, characters not being allowed, mostly just JavaScript not being encoded correctly. And I can scroll forever. But anyway, this tool is already really good to catch baseline. For instance, this will tell you if you have a label which refers to an element that doesn't exist. It will tell you, hey, there's a non-visual element that this label is supposed to label, so that's wrong. It will catch stuff like if you use area hidden and you use it as a boolean like you would do with the checked attribute, it will tell you, hey, this is not the correct value for this attribute. So these types of really strict validators are already really good to catch your basic stuff. So there's also the more modern one, which can also run link scars. I have to tell it, okay, it's UTF-8 encoded, but it will do the same thing. But this will also give us, as you can see, different errors. This will say, okay, I found these stray end tags. This attribute is not allowed on a div. I mean, but why? But okay, fine. This is a bad example. But as you can see, these really strict validators serve as a very good, well, as I said, baseline. I don't know a better word right now. What else? So the validators like this only really work if your page is rendered server-side, because they just do a whatever libcurl or whatever they use, and they go through that HTML, they get back. They don't get any dynamic generated HTML. A good example of that is, for instance, I'm a big fan of Fastmail. It's my mail client. It's a Perl shop, yay. So this is what I get, a couple of errors when I check the HTML that page gives me. Okay, you see that the screen kind of shaking? That's actually a tool that simulates a visual condition. So anyway, only 2 errors. But when I actually copy the generated HTML from the final page, I get lots more. Okay, color on link, all these sorts of attributes that aren't allowed, content that isn't the way it should be. So suddenly, but you would normally not get this. These automated parsers will not get that. So that's a fundamental weakness which you should be aware of when you try these tools to make your life easier. So what do we have if we want to do actual dynamic accessibility testing? Because these things also don't really tell you anything about the accessibility. They won't tell you about contrast. They will just tell you, is this stuff valid? Is it to spec? There's a similar tool, the CSS validator. It will tell you, is this to spec? It won't tell you, hey, you're using a color with an opacity of 0. Why would you do that? Well, text with an opacity of 0, sorry. Why would you do that? It won't, no, it's okay, that's valid, that's okay to do. It will tell you about extensions it doesn't know about, it will warn you, won't error on it, but also a consideration. They're just really strict things. They're not going to try to think about what they're analyzing, they're just analyzing, period. So, interesting tools are tools like Wave. Wave is made by WebAIM. web accessibility in mind, and it's a free tool that you can use in your browser. And what it does is it gives you this nice tool on the left here, which says, okay, Fronteers, 0 errors, 2 alerts, great stuff. And you can actually keyboard operate this, so it's also accessible, at least to the keyboard. And the alert says, okay, there's actually, because you can click the error and it will send you in the page to where the error is. So I clicked it, I clicked it over here. The error shows over there. It says, okay, there's a redundant link because both these links here go to the same article because these talks were discussed in the same article, which is fine. It's only a warning. It's not an error. But in this case, the tool is reasoning, saying, hey, this looks off. You might want to check that out. Another really great thing that Wave does is it gives you contrast problems. You get this one for free, Fronteers. So, the contrast could just be improved in general on links. This yellow is on the link. The amount of reactions to an article needs a bit of work, but that is really nice. Another nice thing that it does, it gives you all these checks in page. But when you use that sort of stuff on links cars, which I had preloaded because it takes it over a minute to chuck through this entire monstrosity. I mean, did this really clear stuff up for us? Not really. It does show us a whole bunch of errors, but it doesn't really make stuff easier to see. So instead you can say, oh, you know what? I don't want styles. Okay, turn styles off. You can see, I don't know why that tool is doing that, because I turned it off and it's still doing it. We'll get to that tool later. It's misbehaving right now. But anyway, with all this chaos on links cards, it's already... So, but now you can see, okay, this is becoming easier to understand. The green things are actually things that are good, that it also identifies saying, good boy, you're doing this well, keep it up. All right. So, what else? Another online analyzer is Tenon.io. This is so annoying. Anyway. I ran Fronteers.nl through Tenon. It says one issue, and the issue it gives you, and this is really nice actually. It says, oh, there's this text there that is marked with a B element, so it's bold. That might actually be a heading that you want. So you might want to look at that. It doesn't say, okay, there's a problem. It says, hey, this looks like you could improve your semantic value here. And I also ran links, cars, and Angren through it. It times out. We already know how to fix this. I do work on Tenon. And the API, which you should be using anyway, because Tenon is mainly just an API, it actually processes it. And for links, cars, I think it generated 300 errors and 600 warnings. But that's pretty good. So another nice one is Power Mapper. That's an American company. You can do these free checks online because this is a paid service. But it gives you this whole dashboard for instance, Angren, with loads of information, line numbers, just the usual stuff. I don't like the real way that they use this color to indicate problems. That might be that this tool is actually not really all that accessible. But I find it difficult to also find order in this dashboard. It also does some usability things, which apparently are bullshit. So it's just another one of these free tools that you can use. There are also a bunch of paid ones. There is SSB Bart's AMP. There is Tenon is also paid, by the way, if you really want to have a subscription to the API, but you can use these online checks for free. There is Sidemores. And Sidemores have a product, and I tried to sign up, but I couldn't complete the form because the buttons were below the screen and I couldn't bring them into focus. So yeah, I'm not going to do that. So these are all a bunch of validators, and they're nice. But it's still manual. You still need to manually validate these things. And we're trying to automate. So how can you automate? Well, you can automate using APIs. And I'll be getting into those in a bit. But first I want to talk about tools that you can have in the browser. So A thing that DQ makes is called X. It's the accessibility engine. It's open source. DQ is an accessibility company, auditing company. And it's an open source engine. It's on GitHub. And what it is basically a bunch of JavaScript that you can use to run checks, to automate accessibility checking, but you can very easily integrate in existing projects. So there are Grunt integrations, Selenium integrations, and you can then very easily have it be part of your build chain as you're writing code. Say, okay, Grunt test, and including all your unit tests, or your usual JavaScript tests, or whatever Karma that you're using, it will also run X over everything, and X will just say, okay, here's a warning, here's an error, and you can configure whether you want to bail or keep going. For instance, during development, you might want to see all errors and all warnings and all suggestions, and during build, you just want to die on errors, depending. But you can configure all this. So, and the nice thing about that is that it's also a browser integration. So you can install this on the Chrome Web Store, and it's also available for Firefox, but for demo's sake I'll have this in Chrome. And it brings up in the developer tools this tab called X, and normally a big honking button that says analyze this page, but it takes forever. Well, on sites like this, on sites like Arngren. So it basically gives you a whole bunch of errors, suggestions, warnings. For instance, HTML element must have a language attribute, and links must have text, and then you can click on them, and then it says, okay, this is WCAG2A, and it's the target's HTML, you should be doing this, and you can click on the more info, and then you go to their online help pages, and it Oh, come on. I'm going to have to turn that off. Okay, if anyone wants to be on the big screen. Okay, what else did I have? Okay, already going into API territory here. So, let's see, where were we earlier? Let's go to Fronteers. So, below this, turn wave off. A really nice tool I like to use is called No Coffee, and you've already seen it be responsible for this, the tilting of the screen. This gives you a whole bunch of filters that you can use to simulate vision problems. And, well, why would you do this job? Well, for instance, you can say, okay, different types of color blindness. It shows you, oh, are my colors still valid? Does it still work with if I'm using color to indicate information, even though I should not just use color? But a macular degeneration, which gives you this blurring thing in the middle of your screen. So what would a user do who has this condition? Well, they want to read, so they're going to try to still get to the information, so they're likely just going to zoom in, and they're going to try to shift the content around. So basically you can use this to make sure, okay, for people with these conditions, is my page, when zoomed in with those types of conditions, still usable? And it's just one step away from having to actually hire real living users with these problems, which would be a good thing to do anyway for actual user testing. But while you're in your development mode, you can use this in the meantime. And there's like vision floaters, so it creates these little floaters in the screen, and they actually move around a bit from time to time. This is an open source. I've asked the author to make it open source. He says he's open to it, but he hasn't gotten back to me because there's a bug in one of the filters that I'd like to fix. It's all SVG filters. It's really clever. Another one I like to see is a nice little contrast checker. So this is called contrast ratio checker. It's available on the Chrome Web Store. And what this gives you is wherever you click with your mouse and there's text, it will basically tell you, okay, here's the contrast for this text. It's foreground to background color, and whether it conforms to the single, double, or AAA WCAG specification. There's no issue with it. If you keep clicking, you keep getting these things. And I don't know why you couldn't just keep track of it with a data attribute on whatever you're evaluating, but fine. You can just click it here and it goes away again. So the Wave plugin I showed, you can also go to wave.webaim.org and there you can enter any site address if you don't want to install the plugin, and it will do the same thing. X plugin I showed the Zebra contrast radio checker. There's a visual area bookmarklet. And the nice thing about that is if you're using area on your page, which you should only do if you don't have any other solutions, then you can, for instance, here's a page that uses area. Well, a lot of it, but you can't see it. So we have this nice little thing, visual area bookmarklet, and I can click it and it chugs a bit. It says I'm loading. So now it shows for all these things, these elements that are on the page, it have specific area roles. It will show, okay, which ones do they have. This one actually has a warning, this changes screen reader behavior, use with caution, and it says it about application, the application role. This one has a tab panel. It actually gives you this nice advice, this role should not be nested within role equals tab list. That's all very nice. This is actually a pretty useful tool. I do believe it's open source. Another thing we have is the Automatica11y bookmarklet, which, if I recall correctly, is made by the Khan Academy. You can get it at GitHub, so anyone can contribute. It's also a bookmarklet, so it gives you down at the bottom of your page a little pair of sunglasses, which you can click, and then you get this nice little menu. You can say, okay, do you have any issues with headings? It gives you these visual indicators in your page. Here's a H1, H2, H2, H3, and it also will give you extra information. You can check whether contrast is right, so it gives you here a warning, hey, this contrast is 301, that's probably incorrect. And then if you hover, I hope you can actually keyboard through this. No, fine. I'm actually going to talk about accessibility of accessibility testing tools. So it says, okay, the contrast is insufficient for this size. A tool I like to use when I have a real contrast problem is the Pichello Group's color contrast analyzer. So this is a little tool that you say, okay, give me a background color. So I click here on the background color drop down. It gives me a color picker, which I can use to pick any color I like. And then I say, okay, give me the foreground, which in this case is white, and it says, okay, that passes. But I can also use this dragger to say, oh, okay, when does it not pass? But this is very useful when you find a failing text. You can find just that nice sweet spot where it fits the WCAG spec. Okay, but these are still just tools, and as I said earlier with these validators, what they have in common is that they're all manual, so this is still all this valuable time that we have to spend, and all we want to do is go to the Winchester, have a pint and wait for the build to be over. So, we have APIs for that. The W3 validator and the JSON validator, both the HTML5 validator, they have JSON APIs, which means you can query them in a different way. Just with, in this case, a little argument says output equals JSON, and then you get a JSON feed of all the errors, which you can then just parse. You can write your own little grunt parser for this. I believe some people already wrote that. And then you can have this nice W3 validator task in your build system. Now, the only negative thing that these things do is that they make you reliant on an external system. It might be down, you might be on a closed network, but through the magic of open source, you can just re-implement this. You can, clone it, implement it yourself, have your local instance running, and you're good. Tenon does the same thing. So Tenon is an API, and it gives you a bunch of more information that is relevant to its specificity, whatever, that word, of the problems that it finds, and, well, do what you will with it. All right, whatever other APIs do we have? Okay, so like I said, there are a bunch of other paid solutions. The Wave API is paid, so they have a credit-based system where you can pay for API amount of usages, and Tenon does as well. So, the main point of all of this, whether it's automated or manual, is we want, through testing, which we all know, we want to prevent regression. We want to just be able to make changes. We want to be able to just, okay, I'm going to change the color of this, run my checks. Is it still fine? Cool, awesome. All right. You know, they say move fast, break stuff. I say move fast, break stuff. Make sure your build system catches it. But to recap, we've seen a bunch of validators, we've seen tools and browser extensions, and we can use them, and they're good for QA, they're good for developers, and they're good for designers, because designers can just check, hey, I'm making this design, is this already accessible? Developers won't have to come back to the designer saying, well, actually, this is not correct. It's everybody can use this across the project. And a number of these tools, they offer the option to integrate with build tools. Any API tool really gives you the option to integrate, whether there already is a ground plugin or not. You can just roll your own, because it's all just JSON going back and forth. Tenor already does things like automatically creating Jira and, depending what you use, Jira, GitHub issues with severity, and so that already offers that integration. But you could do the same thing with X if you wanted to, because GitHub has an open API. All you have to do is, you know, build the glue that binds it all together. So, as I researched these tools, as my computer goes to sleep, I also found a whole bunch of old ones, and ones that are just simply broken. And I mean, for instance, does anybody know what this is? Wow, I'm very impressed. Bobby is here no more. But he's smiling at us beyond the grave, you know. Can you hear him tell us, like, make it accessible, continue what I've started. But yeah, Bobby is no longer with us. Well, the site where he used to be isn't there anymore. Can you still implement it as Java? Is that so? I didn't know.
I think I still have it lying around somewhere.
Really? Wow. I mean, Cynthia says it's still around. I mean, I had it chug on Angren. Took like 10 minutes, but it came back with, you know, information. So, okay, back to other thing. Bobby. And Bobby would it was kind of like the earliest checkers from like 1995, like I was barely alive back then, but it was like the first checker, and it would say, okay, Bobby approves, and people would have this like label that, you know, you had these labels back on your website in the GeoCities days, like you're part of these web rings, and you have these, you know, awards, fake awards your friends would give you. No, anyway, my friends did. And so Bobby would do all those things, just like, yeah, we had these W3 validators and XHTML1 valid, you know, and like, oh, yeah, where'd that take us, huh? Ah, yes, it was so easy back then. So, tools, validators, APIs. Oh, you can see when I made this. This is a while ago. Mosul. Anyway, okay, tenant, API. So, the future. Because I've been talking about the past, and we're talking about the present, what do we have now, but I want to talk about the future. Where are these tools going? Because even the tools we have now, they give us a lot, but they give us false positives. They give us sometimes no positives at all. Or they say, oh, this is all perfectly fine. In the meantime, your text isn't readable because they didn't understand how to interpret the contrast correctly. So, I think as developers, our role is becoming more and larger and larger. Our responsibility is becoming larger, because we're supposed to know how to make all these things accessible, and we're expected to know how to make these things accessible. So we will need better and better tools to take all that work away from us. Looking at statistics, I've gone to webdevdata.org. What webdevdata.org does is they download the top 100 sites from the top million sites of Alexa. They basically just crawl it. So keep in mind that it is static generate HTML, no dynamic stuff. But I crunched some Perl on that, as you do, and I saw some interesting numbers. So this is a graph of sectioning elements being used from 2013 to 2016. And you can see, okay, sections going way up, because there's always going to be more than one section on a page. But in general, sectioning elements, there's increased usage, which is good. It means people are thinking more about semantics, and we're more used to it. Row attributes, that was interesting. Actually went way up in the last year. Keep in mind, you know, these are just raw HTML checks, so keep it with a grain of salt. But in general, we can conclude that this type of attribute is being used more and more. So people are really thinking more about semantics. Why area attribute usage also shows that 30,000 to, I don't know, 120,000. over 3 years. That's pretty good. Means people are also doing, I mean, you can either be very happy about this or you can be scared about it, because it means people are either creating weird span buttons with ARIA, or they're actually using ARIA for what they are supposed to use it. Time-based media element usage. Video went way up. Why did video go way up? Why? Because Flash is gone. All right. I should have had an emoji of a popping champagne cork over there. So Flash has gone way down, which is great. Thank you, Steve Jobs. We owe you. So what this shows is that also this confirms more and more that accessibility is becoming more and more our responsibility. We're doing more with semantics, doing more ARIA. I mean, we're more aware of it. And still, when I'm running stuff through tools, a lot of them don't catch stuff like this. So this is a button with a tab index of -1. All right. Okay, it's native focusable, so I don't know why. But actually, I was talking to Rodney Ram, and he had a case where tab index of -1 actually made sense for him. Button of type equals button. I guess, why not? It's the default, but you could. With an ARIA label of current page, a roll of link. What? A button with a roll of link. Wave doesn't catch this. And a span inside is just getting started. Okay, cool, fine. I don't know. This is live code. This is running somewhere. This was made by somebody. I didn't make this up. So the fact that a lot of tools don't catch this, that's kind of a problem. I do know that a lot of tools are also working on getting better at this. But still, I can put a roll of, what was it? Input, a radio group on an input, and tools won't catch it. Validators won't catch it. Validators will say it's fine. If I put multiple roles on a nav, for instance, it will catch it. Say you can't do this. The validators will warn if I put a role of navigation on the nav, for instance, which should be fine. I mean, it's a warning, and it's deprecated because a nav has the role of navigation. But what if I'm supporting Alt-IE? I might want that. So ideally, in my tooling, I would like to say, hey, like I'm JS linting. Okay, here's my config for the tool. Keep in mind, I'm supporting legacy browsers. Please don't complain when I enforce some things. No, too early. Okay, cool. Humans come later. Still tooling. So, okay, so duplicate roles, validator gets it. Missing alt. You don't have to worry about it. Missing alt, validator picks it up for you. Now, when we're talking about alt, and you have an alt text on a picture and it has one word or one character, that might very well be wrong. One character is very likely wrong. So I talked to Carl about it. It's like, hey Carl, this is likely wrong. Carl said, no, it might be Korean. Yeah, can't argue with that. So the main issue there is that if tooling needs to be better and if it needs to catch more, it likely needs to become more guessing, more heuristic. So I kind of want to ask a question to you as my audience. If I have a web page, which is all divs basically, and near the top of the page I have a UL with a bunch of LIs, and each LI has an anchor in there somewhere, and there's no nav anywhere to be seen on the page, should my tool warn me saying, hey, there's no navigation anywhere here, but there's something there that looks like it? Should the tool warn me about it? Hands up if you think so. Okay, that's not half. All right, maybe a quarter. Because yeah, I've asked myself this question, because you're basically, then you're starting to go into this area of, should my tool be telling me what good practice is and with what strictness? Because a tool might, where do you draw the line? Because a tool might tell me, hey, there's a header, there's no header anywhere on your page. It's weird. But a main, there might not be a main, not having a main on the page. Is that okay? In some cases. Do you still want to flag for it? Depends on context. There's this large it depends factor, and I wish I had a good answer, because it's just, there's these difficult things. Should my tooling warn me if I have a label and it says display none, inline style? it's legal, but I'd like to know about, I mean, there are varying levels of knowledge in the developer world, and whether I can tell whether that display none is actually a good idea or not. But if I'm using tooling as a way to root out common issues, I would like to know this, because this might be code that I didn't write. This might be code somebody else wrote, and he might just have made a mistake, she might have just made a mistake. I would like to know whether that is a problem. So I think you can get out of the idea that tooling will have to have these different layers of configurability, where you say, warn me in everything that you think might be a problem, or warn me on things that clearly are deprecated, and give me state errors for things I'm actually doing wrong according to spec and according to the WCAG and the HTML spec. So, I mean, there are similar things to that, like grid layout. If I'm using grid layout and I use custom ordering based on that Flexbox flex ordering, but the DOM ordering is not the same, should my tool warn me about it? Like, hey, that's going to be read out differently by assistive technologies. Is that an issue? Because to get around that, you need to do a bunch of hacking. So that is actually something that is perfectly fine, but it decreases accessibility. And now it's back in our domain, because suddenly it's about accessibility. So it's difficult to draw the line there. If I have CSS and I say HTML, font size 12 pixels, should my tool warn me about that? I think so. I mean, I'm basically overriding user style sheet. If I'm having a media query that suggests, if I have a media query that uses pixel dimensions, I'd like to get a warning. If I have a media query that suggests I'm on a small viewport, how much time do I have? 10 minutes. 10 minutes. If I have a media query on a small viewport, and I have a button in there with a font size of like, I don't know, half an EM, based on whatever the user has, should I be warned about that? I don't know. That really goes into the domain of, that's not really, that's the part of the designer, and but should the designer not know about accessibility? Is that also not their job? So I'm coming to my next point. Where I would like to see this sort of stuff is in my tooling. If I'm using Sublime, or if I'm using IntelliJ, or VI, or Emacs, if I'm writing an HTML element without a language attribute, I'd like to be told about it. If I'm using an image without an alt, I'd like the tool to tell me about it. If I'm using a design tool and somehow I say, hey, this is for the web, I'd like to adhere to WCAG spec for contrast through some plugin, and I'm sure they can be written for things like Illustrator and Photoshop, even though that's not my field at all. That's where I'd like to see accessibility, because it is largely our responsibility, but it's not just our responsibility. We should be able to tell other people in the chain, designers, content writers, think about accessibility. If I have a heading, H1, with 500 words in it, it's perfectly legal, but I should probably have a talk with my content writer. A heading with 1 word might be fine, but 500 words, that might want to be, you might want to take the key terms out of that, turn the rest into a paragraph. So, did I have anything else? I'd like to know if my CSS has hover styles for an element but no focus styles. Currently, some tools get it, most don't. But I honestly don't think, given what we have now, that unless we get more of this stuff right, more spec stuff right, and get more heuristics correct, it's just still going to be a losing battle, because if my tools don't tell me that I might be employing anti-patterns, I as a developer might have more trouble getting better, because I might not see that there is a problem. I might be on my own. I might not be in a big team with code reviews. So I would like to have tools that tell me, hey, dude, check this out. It might not be a big deal. You can flag it as, I've checked it. Don't warn me about this again. Don't warn me about, having 500 links on a page in one thing. Whatever thing might make no sense. And of course, you don't want that sort of stuff in your build tool all the time as you're developing, as you're live coding. You don't want that analyzer to constantly refresh and tell you a gazillion warnings. Actually, I'm thinking, if I'm using a constantly evaluating tool, I would like to say 5 warnings, 3 errors, 10 suggestions. I don't want the whole list. I'll have a verbose flag for that. And I'll have my RC file telling me, hey, don't tell me about don't warn me about legacy browsers. but warn me about other like SVG support or not. Whether I don't want to accidentally use SVG, or I want to use I don't know, things that aren't supported everywhere that you need polyfills for. And I'm kind of rambling at this point, so I should probably wrap it up. But to wrap it up, because you saw the slide, humans. You're not going to get away from using humans. It is still all about regression testing, and it is still all about their baseline. And as you can see, there's so many things. You can say, okay, this is correct, but you don't know if it's good. It might still be really unusable, even though it's perfectly the spec. So make sure that you show humans whatever you're building, even if it's your coworkers and you're just recording their screen, you're asking them questions as they're doing it, you're asking them, what are you expecting, what do you think this would do, can you please do this task for me? That combined with automated testing and your expertise as a developer yourself and these tools that I've shown you, I think we can make a lot of stuff really a lot more accessible, and that will be that for me. Thank you for listening. Does anyone have any questions? Oh boy. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Now more also on extra tools. We use a lot of language tools now also in automated testing to check for complicated sentences. Yeah, accessibility is also about cognitive. So you can actually check for double negatives or using jargon or using offensive or homophobic or sexist language. You can use that. There's automated tests and they're getting better all the time. So you can have like really stupid errors in your content or in your copy within your web, but also in the actual content. As content writers, then you can catch the most common errors automated now as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I'm assuming you also talk about the readability API?
Yeah, no, there's also Write Good, which is like an NPM module, and there's After the Deadline, which is a web service.
Huh.
There's Alex, which checks for offensive language.
Great, yeah, listen to that guy. No, he's really, there's the Juicy tools, I think, that it's English, but it will analyze your text for, there are all these fancy terms for whether text is difficult or not. I forgot the terms. I forgot to talk about that. But anyway, any other questions? Paul.
Okay, so playing devil's advocate for a bit.
Go ahead.
The two examples you showed about terrible accessibility, link scars, and what was the other one?
Angren?
Yeah, so link scars makes a lot of money, and it's basically because mostly because it's inaccessible and it looks terrible and it doesn't work for a lot of people.
Right.
So using all these accessibility tools, it takes a lot of development time, and then you fix everything and you find out through A/B testing or whatever, you're actually losing a lot of money when you fix all these accessibility issues. That's kind of hard to sell to your boss.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to sell anything to your boss. I mean, the reason I use these two examples is because they're really complex sites. And I want to show what it identifies. I'm not going to try to make your accessibility business case for you. Please don't make me. So, yeah, that really, I don't know. I'm just always going to go for the accessibility angle. I mean, even stuff like this, even stuff like link scars. Why shouldn't anyone be able to lease a car at that place? Because she's really cool. So, sorry, man. I don't really know how to answer the question.
No problem. Well, I agree with what you just said. Just want to find out how something like link scars, how can you make it more accessible? Or work at something like Booking.com. I don't know who that, but
yeah. Well, I mean, Booking.com showed us how, for instance, their date picker could be made accessible, because they did great improvements there. But I mean, link scars, I mean, first off, you would have to say, sorry, you should probably not have all that flashing text in there. And they'd already kind of laugh at you, because that is part of their, I mean, it would, at least you should be able to turn it off.
If I might add, maybe people that are have visual impairment or blind don't drive cars.
But
They don't need to go to them.
but they might want to lease a car for somebody else.
Yeah.
it's discriminating based on ability, and
But Uber said, and they got adopted, so.
I mean, it is like, oh, well, the group X doesn't do Y, no, but they might want to do Y for reason Z. You can't know that, right?
Say, oh, because you're blind, I've decided what you can and cannot do, and screw you. Let that
No,
person
so you
decide,
have
I can't do that.
practical, but because building a website costs a lot of money. And making it accessible costs even more money. And if you don't need to spend that, then.
And stop building websites, do something that makes more money with less work.
Right, I mean,
Yeah, I think that's the
way
point.
to do
I was just going to talk about tooling.
No, I only say yeah, there is practical, but I agree.
Okay, can we discuss this during drinks? Because it's maybe better, okay.
I also have a tooling question. So,
Yes.
So you showed a lot of tools, and how can I best determine what kind of tools suits me best? Because I'm probably not going to use all of them.
That's actually a point I didn't bring up and I should have. I like to combine a bunch of them. I use the contrast checker a lot and Wave or Tenon for my bottom line and the validator. So I combine them. There is currently no tool that does the entire stack of basic HTML, accessibility, usability, blah, blah, blah. We at Tenon are working hard at that, but currently there isn't a golden hammer. So until then, we have to make do with combining them where they're most useful. So automatic validation during your development phase, and while you're doing your proper usability or accessibility testing, employ stuff like no coffee, because I mean stuff like the cataract filter, that's hard to simulate unless you actually are looking at it. So that's stuff that I don't think you can automate. You can automate. So try to get that basic out with just spec and WCAG checks, and everything else just use browser tools and real humans.
Is there something like Selenium to test, like a speech stuff that you can check if you have a dialogue, that the other elements are...
Yes, I'm so glad you're asking all these questions, because I forgot to bring all these things up. So you can use, for instance, X in your unit tests with Karma to run these types of checks. You can use jQuery to check, hey, I have a button here with a React span that controls another span. When I click it, you query the event handler, you click it, did the state of my DOM actually become what it should? Did the attributes change as you should? You can use Selenium in X too. There's a web driver. So yeah, there are options there. I know that Tenon integrates with Selenium. I don't know if Wave does, because I haven't been able to look at their paid solution.
Yeah, to add on that, we're using Selenium-based robot screenshots to actually generate the screenshots for the documentation, but they also at the same time are accessibility tests.
Mm-hmm.
So you grab onto ARIA roles, you grab onto other things, you check if everything is all right, and then you take the screenshot. And if somebody has broken it, the screenshotting tool will likely complain. And so you combine tests, which also justifies the effort you spend on it.
Right.
It gives you automated screenshots for the documentation and accessibility testing.
Cool. Yeah. Good point. I mean, I was thinking about that when you see all the flashing text on linked cars. Like, how are you going to test whether there is any flashing content on the page? So you basically have to record 5 seconds at 60 FPS, do massive diffing to see if content is there or not. But then you could actually mark it to see the areas on the page your stuff is. I mean, that'd be great to build. I mean, maybe it already exists, but it'd be a really cool tool to have. Like, hey, does this violate the WCAG flashing content rules? Anything else?
You said that you're a freelancer that does accessibility work.
Yes.
So did you learn this all on your own, or is there a clear learning path for maybe developers that want to become accessibility consultants, or like developers that want to just improve their knowledge of, the raw accessibility under the hood?
No, I did not learn this all on my own. I was very fortunate to be married for many years to an accessibility expert. I went to CSUN in San Diego, where I met many accessibility people, and I hang out a lot at the accessibility Slackers channel on gitter.im. Lots of big accessibility names hang out there. They sometimes will answer your questions. Stack Overflow, of course, is a great resource. SidePoint forums, good books. I think there are Hayden Pickering's ebooks. Anyone? Hints? Come on. There are more people here who know way more than I do. Other online resources that I've overlooked? No? Oh,
So
well.
there's no clear learning path, like,
No,
you just have to go.
I don't know. I know that there's the Audacity accessibility course. I don't know how good it is. I don't know how accessible it is. I know that Marcy Sutton has done a lot of work on that. Marcy Sutton works for DQ Systems.
Hers around Egghead.
Yeah, Egghead.io. She works on that, right? There's
There's
a
a lynda.com one from Joe Dolson. That's WordPress accessibility though, but he still goes over pretty standard accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, like, when I go to do my online banking, I get to swear at all the people who came up with the design and the JavaScript and the HTML and the browser. So,
Right.
I mean, but at some point, I internally think that these guys probably don't know about what accessibility is. And like, I can't feel like reaching out to people if I don't have the resources to give them. Like, a lot of people, like, there was a survey that said if developers knew about accessibility, they would go and implement it.
right.
The problem is they don't.
Yeah. I found developers to be in general really wanting to learn this kind of stuff, but I wish I knew something out of the top of my head. Apart from the resources I just named, like good books that are out there, I'm trying to think of a comprehensive guide that. I mean, there's the YAREA authoring practices guide.
The book should be really sufficient.
Right. Well, Hayden Pickering's books are, in my personal view, by far the best books. I mean, he just had a new one, Inclusive Design Patterns. It's fabulous. His book before that, what was it called again? Apps for All. Really good. There's a list apart books that are in general just good on responsive design, but I think most of them also mention accessibility issues. There's probably a bunch I've overlooked that I just can't think of now, but yeah, it's a good question. I just wish I could answer it better right now. Sorry.
Chrome is have a YouTube channel where they have a channel especially for accessibility. It's A11y cast, and they just started and they do weekly updates with small accessibility tips.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Rob Dodson and Alex Boxall do those on YouTube.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
You can tell a developer, hey, subscribe to this channel and keep watching it every day.
No, but I mean, still, most of good accessibility is just, get your semantics right, get your contrast right, and then see how you want to do this. If you use Angular, you should know about NGArea. If you use React, you might want to look at React A11y or React X. It really, after you've gotten the basics right, which the validator can tell you most of, then it really depends on what stack you're trying to use.
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, if you want to learn Angular, just search, and there's going to be lots of Treehouse and, I don't know, Udemy or Coursera and
Right.
stuff. And then search for accessibility courses. I've done this. You won't get anything. I mean, so that's why you're asking.
Yeah, I might be too much in the accessibility bubble nowadays, but well, then.
The answer is for everybody here to ask for that content, right?
Or maybe for some of the creators.
But yeah, I mean, so, from a capitalist American perspective, if there's demand, it gets created, right? So if there's people saying, I want accessible training, and they don't have accessible training, they'll start to see a market demand for that, and they'll say, yeah, you should probably make that.
Yeah.
Like all those terrible HTML tutorials we saw, and all those terrible CSS
Yeah.
tutorials we saw, and all those terrible JavaScript was
Right, yeah, so suddenly W3 schools will start talking about,
schools all
yeah.
the way, man.
But it will be the market at work, but as long as it doesn't enforce more anti-patterns, like, just area all the things, then, yeah, we're making a problem worse, because, then, this area is so difficult and it made everything worse. No, you implemented it wrong. It's difficult.
I don't know, maybe I should start working on that.
There you go.
Hey,
Exactly.
well volunteered.
Well, on that bombshell.